Former Cincinnati Bengals and Baltimore Ravens wide receiver TJ Houshmandzadeh disrespected Lamar Jackson with an unhinged take, and the Lamar Jackson versus Josh Allen conversation is getting a little bit out of hand ahead of week 4. All that and more coming up next on a bonus episode of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here today, making Locked On Ravens both a part of your day and your first listen each and every day, free and available for you all podcasting platforms. That includes in video form on YouTube, where you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, also in audio form, where you can follow along wherever you get your favorite podcast. Today's bonus episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I had said on yesterday's show with Sam and Joku, I said, I don't know if we're going to do a bonus episode. If there's a headline, obviously we'll chase that headline, talk about it. And lo and behold, we got a lot of headlines over the course of Thursday night after I recorded yesterday's episode, as well as just on Friday in general. TJ Houshmandzadeh might be a familiar name. Obviously played for the Cincinnati Bengals and actually had a stint in Baltimore, which didn't go very well. He actually had a very unhinged take on Lamar Jackson and honestly, kind of disrespected Lamar in a couple different ways just by even saying it. So we'll be talking about what he had to say in the first part of the show. And then obviously the Ravens and Bills playing in week number 4, primetime under the lights in Baltimore. And the Allen and Jackson conversation, look, the two guys love each other. They respect each other, but there always seems to be toxic discourse around the two. And that is certainly the case now as well. So we're going to talk about that. And then we'll get into more of a Ravens and Bills preview in general for week 4. Again, just a reminder, we'll be back here tomorrow on game day with a game day episode bright and early, 6 a.m. Eastern time. And then obviously after the game, we'll be back instantly reacting to what happened over the course of week 4. So let's talk about TJ Houshmandzadeh and what he said about Lamar Jackson. And honestly, I can't believe he said it. I don't believe that he believed it, but he sounded pretty sure when he was talking about it. So maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But they were doing a segment about the Bengals and Joe Burrow and why they lost in week 3 and why they're 0-3, et cetera, et cetera. And essentially you have TJ Houshmandzadeh saying that, look, Burrow's playing well, wasn't his fault they lost. That's been the pretty common theme this week on talking about Cincinnati. But then he went as far as to say every team, with the exception of the Chiefs and the Bills, would trade their quarterback for Joe Burrow. So obviously the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes and the Bills with Josh Allen. And so Joy Taylor, and this all came from Speak on Fox Sports, Joy was like, the Baltimore Ravens? What about the Ravens? And TJ Houshmandzadeh, is confident as ever. He was confident when he said this. He said they would trade their quarterback for Joe Burrow. He said it with the utmost confidence in the world. And Joy was like, no, they're not trading Lamar Jackson. They're not trading Lamar Jackson. And look, hey, guess what? Are the Ravens trading Lamar Jackson? No, they're not. But it just goes back to this conversation about Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow. And look, I think Joe Burrow is a good quarterback. I don't have him above Lamar, but I think he's a good quarterback. But all this conversation about ranking Joe Burrow above Lamar and having him here, and obviously Joe went to the Super Bowl. Lamar hasn't been to a Super Bowl yet. There's all that conversation about playoffs. And we talk about, to me, the conversation about Joe Burrow when it comes to a bunch of other quarterbacks, and even, in the comments and the quotes and whatever on the post and the video, it was a bunch of other fans of other teams too saying, they wouldn't trade Geno Smith for Joe Burrow right now. They wouldn't trade Herbert. They wouldn't trade this guy. They wouldn't trade that guy. There seems to be a pretty common hierarchy of quarterbacks where even though Patrick Mahomes hasn't played very well this season, he's still regarded as the best quarterback in football. He has certainly earned that title. Josh Allen, I believe, is playing as the best quarterback in football right now. And he and Lamar Jackson, I believe, are kind of on the second tier where it's Mahomes, Allen, and then Lamar. Allen and Lamar together in that tier, Mahomes above them. So it's Mahomes, than the Allen Lamar tier. And Burrow was in that conversation, but I think he's fallen to the tier below, or maybe at the very, very, very end behind Lamar and Josh Allen in that second tier. But somehow, he's still being ranked above these guys and still being praised among these guys. And okay, all these other teams would trade, their quarterback for Joe Burrow. And we can just do some quick comparisons, right? I have the stats here. First of all, Lamar is 4-1 against Joe Burrow head-to-head in the regular season. And obviously, we know that Lamar and the Ravens have dominated Cincinnati over the years. Obviously, Cincinnati had, was it 2020, 2021? There was a year where Cincinnati just dominated Baltimore. I think it was 2021, if I'm not mistaken. But other than that, Lamar and the Ravens have been dominant over Cincinnati. Lamar obviously came in the league in 2018. Joe Burrow came in the league in 2020. So Lamar's been in the league for 2 more years, but Lamar has 2 less losses as a quarterback than Joe Burrow does. Lamar has 21 losses. Joe Burrow has 25 losses. Now, that's a bit of a byproduct of who's around. Lamar came into a better team than Joe Burrow did. But at the same time, it's like, okay, if Joe Burrow's this great quarterback who deserves to be ranked above everybody and anybody, apparently, outside of just a couple guys, well, can he be a savior? And he has been for Cincinnati. He absolutely has. Without them drafting Joe Burrow and getting him, he has elevated that franchise. But that's the conversation with Joe Burrow, but it somehow escapes Lamar Jackson, who was also elevated. Lamar has done more with less, essentially. That's been the conversation because Joe has had Jamar Chase. Joe has had T. Higgins, right? He's had these good receivers in there, and the Bengals went out there and drafted him, a stud who he had played with in college. Well, Lamar has had Mark Andrews. He's had Zay Flowers. Joe has had much better receiving weapons to work with over the course. He had Tyler Boyd there for a while, right? Lamar, again, he's had guys like the tight end room. You can't ignore that. Cincinnati's tight end room has kind of been, very inconsistent, honestly not very good ever since Joe got there. But you know what? He had Jamar Chase, and that's all we have to say about that. Lamar averages more pass yards per attempt than Joe Burrow. Burrow averages about 80 passing yards more than Lamar per game, but obviously that's a product. Well, I guess 75 per game, but that's a product of the offense both play in. But again, it's hard to compare, and I don't know if I can actually do this on the fly since 2020. I might not be able to. Yeah, it's all right. I might not be able to. But at the end of the day, it's a lot closer than people think. And again, you would think that, Lamar is behind Joe in every category, even though Joe came in 2 years later. That's not the case. It's not the case. Joe Burrow, his rating is just 1 point above Lamar's. Obviously, we know what Lamar brings to the table as a rusher. I'm not counting that out. Everybody's saying, look, as a quarterback, it's all about the arm. It's all about the arm, which, by the way, both quarterbacks have really good arms, right? Both Joe and Lamar have good arms. But you have to factor in everything that these guys do. And while Joe Burrow has some underrated mobility here, underrated mobility there, it's nowhere near what Lamar Jackson brings to the table here. And you have to account for the fact that, if you want to play the game of, Joe Burrow passes for more yards per game and this, that, and the other, well, Lamar Jackson has about 5,000 more rushing yards over the course of his career, 20 more rushing touchdowns. He averages about 3 more yards per attempt. And again, that's a part of the game today for quarterbacks, right? This is like part of the game for a lot of quarterbacks. Where again, you can talk about a Josh Allen, you can talk about Lamar, you can talk about all these other dynamic dual threat players. And that's something you do have to take into account on top of the fact that, Lamar, when he has been healthy, and that's the thing. But guess what? Has Joe been healthy his entire career? No. But we don't hear that conversation about Joe compared to Lamar. It's all about Lamar can't stay healthy, not Joe can't stay healthy. So look, it's not me trying to disrespect Joe Burrow. Again, I think both quarterbacks are good quarterbacks. They're the 2 of the best quarterbacks in this league. They should both be up there in that conversation. But the notion that, the Ravens would jump at the opportunity to trade Lamar for Joe Burrow and just, get rid of him in an instant. On TJ Houshmandzadeh's part, you also have to factor in that Lamar, this offense is built around him. They can't just plug Joe Burrow into this offense and, oh, that solves all their issues and all their problems. And no, I mean, Lamar's the guy that goes out there and, avoids sacks the way he has so far this season and puts that Superman cape on. And all great quarterbacks can. Joe Burrow certainly put that Superman cape on before for Cincinnati plenty of times. But the Ravens have gone all in on Lamar Jackson. Trading, again, we're not talking about the whole, is he going to get traded? That's literally not a conversation. But it's just the notion of like continuing to say, Lamar has so little value that the Ravens would just jump at the opportunity to trade him. That to me is the part. And obviously, we all know TJ Houshmandzadeh played for Cincinnati for a while. He came over to the Ravens for a year, and it did not go well at all. On the field, he was bad. He had that crucial drop in the divisional round against Pittsburgh to lose him the game, and he did not have a good time. He was unhappy with his role, unhappy with the team, and left on pretty bad terms. So obviously, he's gonna ride for the Bengals, and that's kind of what we have to understand here is that it's probably coming from a place of bias to Cincinnati. He's long supported that organization, and so when he has a platform like this, of course he's gonna go up there and say something like that. But it's like, they get paid to do this stuff, right? They get paid to go up there, and if they're just putting out stuff that's like, okay, come on, really? I mean, like the response to this was, as it should have been, was, what is this guy talking about? Why does TJ Houshmandzadeh have a mic to say this right now? Are we being serious? Because it's also the audacity of saying it, even if Joe Burrow wasn't the main reason why Cincinnati's 0-3 right now, he's certainly a contributing factor, right? I mean, Lamar was a contributing factor in those two losses, even though it was very far down on that list. It's kind of the same thing for Joe Burrow in a lot of different instances. But the quarterback gets that blame. And Cincinnati's 0-3. And the Ravens are 1-2, right? It's not like the Ravens are much better, but the conversation would even just have a little more relevancy if Cincinnati was 3-0 right now, right? But they're not. They always start slow. They've had this issue. And while I think it's more on Zach Taylor than it is on Joe Burrow, I'm very out on Zach Taylor as a coach personally. I mean, why are we having this conversation when Cincinnati's 0-3? That to me is the other part of like, okay, yeah, maybe Baltimore hasn't started off the year great, but it's not like we can talk about Cincinnati as this dominant team so far. They haven't won a game yet. So why are we having this conversation? So it is, it's just another feather in the Lamar Jackson trash talk cap, which is crazy that if I had the hat physically on my head, we would be putting all the feathers in there because there would be a lot of them. But I'll tell you right now, the Ravens would much rather have Lamar Jackson than Joe Burrow. And I personally believe Lamar Jackson is better than Joe Burrow, although I do again believe both are two of the best in the NFL. Coming up in the second part of the show, Lamar Jackson versus Josh Allen, a great matchup on the horizon in week 4, but the debate between the two of Lamar Jackson versus Josh Allen starting to get a little out of hand. Stay tuned. We'll talk about what's being talked about next on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by Robinhood Gold. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash, receive unlimited 1% deposit bonuses, and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 per month. New gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. And the show is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. So one Caleb Williams passing yard gets a 1-1 on PrizePicks every week in September. That's right, only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. 4 weeks of free W's. Don't miss this deal on PrizePicks because it's gone when September ends. Plus, PrizePicks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. So for this Ravens and Bills game, if you want to put maybe more on Zay Flowers receiving yards, maybe you like the Bills side of things, more on Khalil Shakir's receiving yards, you can do that over on PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. Is guaranteed at PrizePicks. Run your game. We're back for our second segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this Saturday bonus edition episode. Ravens and Bills face off tomorrow night, Sunday Night Football. Super pumped for that game, man. I mean, that to me, one of the early season games of the year. And I think we'll be looking back on this one with, hopefully, for the Ravens side of things, a lot of fond memories, because I think for both these teams, they need a win, but Baltimore needs it much more than Buffalo does, considering Buffalo is undefeated and the Ravens are 1-2. But we talk about Josh Allen, we talk about Lamar Jackson, two great quarterbacks. Again, a lot of great quarterbacks in this league, and Lamar and Josh, two of the best. And we've heard the respect that each of those guys have for one another. Josh Allen heaping praise on Lamar Jackson earlier in the week. But, man, let me tell you, some of the media perspective on Lamar Jackson versus Josh Allen. Former NFL players. I don't know what it is with all the Lamar disrespect this week with former NFL players, but we certainly got more. We certainly got more of that on Friday yesterday. And on the facility, LaShawn McCoy talked about Lamar, talked about Josh Allen, former Philadelphia Eagle, Buffalo Bill. Shady ended up saying, I think Josh throws the ball a lot better than Lamar runs than Josh. What Lamar does best, he runs. How big is that gap for where Josh runs? Josh throws the ball better. I just think that Josh can do more, and I think he's better at playing the game. This is just such a weird statement to me, if we're being honest, especially that last part. I think he's better at playing the game. Is there a specific way you're supposed to play the game? Is there a blueprint? Do we throw robots out there on the field and say you're programmed this one way to do it, and if you don't do it the right way, you don't play the game as good as the other guy? I'm at a loss for words on that, because the way Lamar plays the game and the way Josh Allen plays the game, similarities, differences, but you telling me that, the dynamic ability of Lamar and, dissing on his throwing and all that, when Lamar is a fully capable thrower of the football, just because, again, this kind of probably comes down to the bias of passing yards, right? Where obviously both Lamar and Josh Allen run the football. That is a huge part of both of their games. But Buffalo tends to throw the ball more than Baltimore does. That just is what it is. Both came in the league in 2018. Obviously, Josh was taking about 20 or so picks before Lamar was. But at the end of the day, the offenses that these two have been in, and if you want to argue even the receiving weapons, it's not like Josh Allen has had like 3 All-Pros next to him every single season. But hey, you know what? He did have Stephon Diggs for a decent amount of time. And last I checked, Stephon Diggs is still a pretty good receiver at the NFL level. Obviously didn't work out in Buffalo, but you look at the actual completion percentages here. Lamar actually has a higher completion percentage over the course of his career than Josh Allen does. 64.5 compared to 63.5. Obviously, a lot of this also probably has to do with playoff bias, where Josh Allen does have better playoff stats than Lamar Jackson. But guess what? Unlike Joe Burrow, if you want to have that argument about Joe Burrow, he made the Super Bowl, okay, like that is valid. Joe Burrow has made it further in the playoffs than Lamar has. Josh Allen has not. Again, I think both guys are great. I think Josh Allen is playing like the best quarterback in football right now. I think he has played the best QB play in the NFL this year. He has had that. And I think we can all be objective and say that, where Lamar has been good, and I think his play does not reflect what the Ravens' record is. I think the Ravens' record is a lot worse than the way Lamar has played. Obviously, there are a bunch of other issues with that. But, man, you can't deny what Josh is doing this season. But now we're pitting them against each other. It's like these guys have so much respect for each other and so much admiration and appreciation for each other. And all we hear from the media is, oh, well, Josh is better, and there's been really no defense about Lamar in this whole conversation, where I don't think, at least I haven't seen any one thing about, oh, well, Lamar is a better quarterback, this, that, and the other. It's all just like, oh, hey, let's go talk down on Lamar and say that he doesn't play the game the right way, essentially. Josh plays the game better than Lamar does, which, again, I just think is such a weird thing to say. Like, both guys play the game fine. They play to their skill set. They play to their offensive personnel. They play around the way that their teams have built their offenses around them. There's no one guy plays better than the other. I mean, on performance-wise, yes, but stylistically, both guys run the football a lot. Both guys have decent weapons to throw the ball to. I think, again, Buffalo's receiving core is now more on par with Baltimore's, whereas in the past, again, with Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, etc., it was more favored towards Buffalo. But you also look at some of these as well, the turnovers with Josh Allen, right? If we're saying, oh, well, Josh throws the ball better and this, that, and the other, are we factoring in turnovers? Are we factoring interceptions? Because Josh Allen has 32 more interceptions than Lamar Jackson has over the course of his career. And that, to me, is that has to play a part in it too. So, if we say, oh, Lamar plays the game this way, Lamar plays the game that way, Lamar and Josh play the game fine. They play the game their way. And I'm not going to pit one against the other for that. But if we're just going to go and talk up Josh Allen and talk down on Lamar Jackson, at least put everything into account here, where Josh is better in some categories, Lamar is better in others, but we only hear about the ones Josh is better in, at least recently. And it's not just Josh, it's all quarterbacks, where we tend to hear that over others. And then you have James Jones going back to last year, saying that he can't sit here. He says, I cannot sit here and say last year he was the best player in the National Football League if it wasn't for his team's record. When I see Josh Allen have 40-plus touchdowns again, when I watch him and Josh Allen play the game, in my humble opinion, Josh is the better quarterback. You can have your opinion on who's the better quarterback, right? You can do that. But Lamar was the best player in football last year, in my opinion. Sure, you could argue his team was great. It was. He had a historic defense. Everything was humming for him. But you want to know why a lot of it was humming? It was because of Lamar Jackson. Take Lamar off that team, they're a wild card team at best. Maybe they don't even make the playoffs, right? Not far-fetched to say that at all. So, again, you take Josh Allen off the Bills, it's the same situation. Take Mahomes off the Chiefs, Burrow off the Bengals, whatever you want to have with that conversation. But it's like, man, we're going back to last year to disrespect Lamar now? Like, we're done with that. That was a conversation you should have had in June or whenever when they put the NFL Top 100 out? August? Whenever? July? Should have had it then. We're a month into the season. There's no time and no place for that. That's ridiculous. And Sean McCoy also had another thing on Lamar Jackson saying, I need Lamar to be the best player. There are some times when he had great moments, right? But he's not the best player on the field. Josh Allen, you can't even deny he's the best player on the field every time he plays the game. Again, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? This is unbelievable. The fact that there were so many of these headlines that I had to do a bonus episode today, like, honestly, like, hey, you know what? Content, right? When there is stuff to talk about, we talk about it. And whether it's Lamar praise, Lamar, whatever it is. There were so many of these former NFL players disrespecting Lamar Jackson in a span of 24 hours, I think it was, literally. Lamar is the best player on the field 999 times out of 1,000. 999 times out of it. It's very rare Lamar is not the best player on the field when he plays. It's very rare. You cannot deny that. There are players that are up to Lamar, and you might have to have a conversation about it. But, like, what are we doing here? He's not the best player on the field? Really? I don't even, again, like, I'm speechless. It's my job to come up here and talk and give analysis and opinions and whatnot, and I don't have any words for this. Same thing with Josh, right? 999 times out of 1,000, Josh is the best player on the field too. And same with all these other great guys. But again, if you're going to keep that energy with Josh, you got to keep with Lamar too. It's just, even if you think Josh is better than Lamar, you can't be out here saying that Lamar is not the best player on the field, right? Like that to me, it is, yeah. I don't have any words. This was a theme. This was a theme. Even Emmanuel Ocho. Josh Allen is a scarier football player than Lamar Jackson. Josh can run almost as good, and Josh can throw way better. Excuse me. This was all on the same show, by the way. This was all on the same show. And all these comments in this episode were on the same network. TJ was on a different Fox show. And then all these comments in the second part of the show we talked about here were the same show, the same day. It was just tear down Lamar Day on this show. But you know what? We're here to defend Lamar Jackson, because if they're not going to do it there, we will do it here. Coming up with the final part of the show, move away from that, talk about more of a general Ravens and Bills preview. And we'll obviously have more Ravens and Bills content coming up over the course of the rest of the weekend. So be sure to stay tuned. Lots to get to still on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. So for the Ravens and Bills matchup on Sunday Night Football, Baltimore actually opened up as 2.5-point favorites in this game. So if you like that line for the Ravens or for the underdog Bills, be sure to go to FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com, and that's FanDuel.com. We're back here, our final segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this bonus edition of the show. Appreciate everybody for being here and making Locked On Ravens a part of your day, your first listen each and every day as well. Hopefully you're enjoying the start to your weekend. Ravens and Bills play Sunday night. So if you want daily Ravens coverage 5 days per week, plus bonus episodes like this, instant reaction episodes after games, and so much more, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe button on YouTube and follow along in audio form as well. Tell a friend, tell a family member, share this episode with someone you know who wants some Ravens coverage. And if you're an everydayer, thank you for tuning in every single day. If you're new to the channel, welcome in. Hopefully you stay a while. And if you're somewhere in the middle, welcome back in. Ravens and Bills, big game, big game on Sunday night. And this is what I'm really, really excited for. We talked about this with Sam and Joko on yesterday's episode, and we talked about a lot from the Lamar Jackson, the Marlon Humphrey, I'll put it in air quotes, beef that they had on Instagram. They shared their sides of the story to how we feel like Baltimore matches up with Buffalo. Sam and I both like this matchup. We both like it for the Ravens. Not that Buffalo isn't going to put up a fight. We both think they will, but especially on the defensive side of the ball for the Bills, you have defensive personnel packages where Buffalo, I don't think, is going to adjust. They usually play lighter, multiple DB packages, and the Ravens, we know they like to play physical, play heavy, in balanced lines, rotations, whatever it may be. And I think that Baltimore is going to try to impose their will. Buffalo's run defense, 22nd in the league in terms of yards per attempt, and their secondary is a top 4 unit. So, I mean, you look at those splits and you probably say, just run the heck out of the ball with Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson and open up the rest of your offense that way. Andrew Voorhees is doubtful for this game with an ankle injury. He did not practice. He actually did a couple of things on Friday, but went inside after about 5 or 10 minutes, apparently. So he is doubtful in this one. Jalen Armour-Davis is out. So they could either start Patrick McCary at left guard and put Roger Rosengarten at right tackle. They could start Ben Cleveland at left guard. They could start Josh Jones at left guard. Plenty of possibilities there, but Buffalo's defensive front is formidable. Von Miller, Greg Rousseau, Ed Oliver, those guys, all really, really, really good football players. So when I look at players to watch in this game, and we talked about this yesterday, we'll talk about it tomorrow. We'll talk about it today here too. Mark Andrews, Justin Tucker, Roquan Smith, 3 guys who have struggled to start the season for the Ravens, 3 stars. You see those 3 stars right there? These are 3 stars for the Ravens, and they have not gotten off the starts that many people have anticipated for them, and you just hope that they can maybe find it in a huge Sunday Night Football matchup under the lights. The Ravens are 20-3 under John Harbaugh in primetime games at M&T Bank Stadium at home, so that bodes well for what the Ravens can do here. I certainly think that this is going to be a really hard-fought game. Buffalo's been just steamrolling opponents over the past couple of weeks here. I don't think that's the case in this game. Baltimore has a 1-2 record. I get it. You know, it's tough, and that's why I think for Baltimore, they're going to come in motivated, much like they did. I mean, Baltimore is not fully out of that hole yet that they dug themselves in the first 2 weeks. Obviously, 1-2 is a lot better than 0-3. I'd much rather be in Baltimore's position than Cincinnati's, where they're in that hole at 0-3. But you still have to dig your way out of there a little bit. And falling to 1-3 is not doing you any favors whatsoever. Buffalo's a team that's looking to continue that hot start. On the offensive side of the ball, they've gotten James Cook involved a lot. Obviously, Josh can do incredible things both with his arm and with his legs, much like Lamar can. And their receiving group has actually been really good for them this season, despite not having Stephon Diggs, Khalil Shakir, and other players stepping up and making an impact too. Keon Coleman, although he got benched essentially in that first quarter on Monday night, he ended up having a touchdown, his first career one. Curtis Samuel hasn't made too much of an impact over there, but you have other players doing their thing. Dalton Kincaid is a tight end. Dawson Knox as well. Bill's offensive line is really, really good. So there are plenty of areas where Buffalo matches up with Baltimore better, and then Baltimore matches up with Buffalo better. But with that being said, I mean, my keys here, I lay them out, dominate on the ground on both sides of the ball, and that does go right into number 2, which is contain Josh Allen as well. Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson on offense, and stopping Josh Allen and James Cook on defense. Let's keep your foot on the gas for 4 quarters. I mean, that's been the message all week, essentially, after Ravens almost blew another lead against the Dallas Cowboys in week 3. And if they are up in the 4th quarter big, I don't expect that to happen this week. But if it does, keep your foot on the gas. Keep your foot on the pedal. That's what the Ravens have to do. So with that being said, again, put this out yesterday. I'm going to go with Baltimore 27-26. Talked about player to watch and Justin Tucker. I'm going with him on the game-winning kick and hopefully giving the fan base a little bit of a sigh of relief and maybe, wipe the forehead off and say, all right, maybe Justin Tucker's back after all. I'm not giving up on Justin Tucker yet, even though it's been a rough stretch, and hopefully he can break out of his slump on Sunday night. That's all I have for you here today on this episode of Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in to our bonus edition. Be sure to like and subscribe in video form. Follow along in audio form for 5 days a week of daily Ravens coverage. Tell a friend, tell a family member. I really, really appreciate that, and thank you for all the support. Coming up tomorrow, we'll be back here 6 a.m. Eastern time for our game day episode. We'll be diving much more extensively into this Ravens and Bills matchup, so be sure to stay tuned. See you right back here tomorrow on game day on Locked On Ravens.